Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Vijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Thiravanachari. Jamuna Thiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Thiravanachari. Jamuna Thiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Krishna Balaram, Jai Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jai Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jai Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhe. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman. Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo. Sitaram Lakshman Hanumana ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Ram Nomi ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarane. I think last year we did not have such a celebration. It was total lockdown last year. We're very fortunate. 46 years ago, today Srila Prabhupada triumphantly opened Sri Sri Krishna Balarama Mandir ki. Grand celebration. The governor came, many prominent personalities from Vrindavan. Also Harinam pujas. Prabhupada performed the first artik. We'll hear more from the devotees about this very glorious day. I remember in Miami many, many years ago, anticipating Ramachandra's appearance day, all the devotees would be going out and getting bushes and flowers, and we had Nunaimisharanya in Miami at the time. It was, we had 10 acres, a very beautiful forest kind of setting. So whenever the Lord appears, the devotees get excited. They want to glorify the Lord, glorify His pastimes, and that's the reason for His appearance. So there are many versions, not versions, there are many Ramayana, even in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami is saying that you've heard so many pastimes. He gives a brief summary of the pastimes of Lord Rama. The Lord's pastimes are unlimited, so you can only try to glorify, just to encourage the devotees, glorify the Lord. And this is the reason why the Lord appears, to attract the devotees and to kill the demons, annihilate the demons. As a start, I thought I would read at least a summary of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord Ramachandra from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is our main source of knowledge and inspiration. So there's a quick summary. This 10th chapter describes how Lord Ramachandra appeared in the dynasty of Maharaj Katvanga. It also describes the Lord's activities, telling how He killed Ravana and returned to Ayodhya, the capital of His kingdom. The son of Maharaj Katvanga was Dhirgabahu. His son was Raghu. The son of Raghu was Aja, and the son of Aja was Dasarath. The son of Dasarath was Lord Ramachandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the Lord descended into this world in His full quadruple expansion as Lord Ramachandra, Lakshman, Bharata, and Shatrughna, great sages like Valmiki, who were actually in knowledge of the absolute truth, described His transcendental pastimes. Srila Shukadeva Goswami described these pastimes in brief. Lord Ramachandra went with Vishvamrita and killed Rakshasas like Maricha. After breaking the stout and strong bow known as Haradanu, the Lord married Mother Sita and cut down the prestige of Parasaram. To obey the order of his father, he entered the forest, accompanied by Lakshmana and Sita. There he cut off the nose of Surpanaka and killed the associates of Ravana, headed by Kara and Dushana. Ravana's kidnapping of Sitadevi was the beginning of this demon's misfortune. When Maricha assumed the form of a golden deer, Lord Ramachandra went to bring the deer to please Sitadevi. But in the meantime, Ravana took advantage of the Lord's absence to kidnap her. When Sitadevi was kidnapped, Lord Ramachandra, accompanied by Lakshman, searched for her throughout the forest. In the course of this search, they met Jatayu. Then the Lord killed the demon Kabanda and the commander Vali and established a friendly relationship with Sugriva. After organizing the military strength of the monkeys and going with them to the shore of the sea, the Lord awaited the arrival of Samudra, the ocean personified. But when Samudra did not come, the Lord, the master of Samudra, became angry. Then Samudra came to the Lord with great haste and surrendered to him, wanting to help him in every way. The Lord then attempted to bridge the ocean, and with the help and advice of Vibhishan, he attacked Ravana's capital, Lanka. Previously, Hanuman, the eternal servant of the Lord, set fire to Lanka, and now, with the help of Lakshman, the forces of Lord Ramachandra killed all the Rakshasa soldiers. Then Lord Ramachandra personally killed Ravana. Mandodari and the other wives lamented for Ravana. In accordance with Lord Ramachandra's order, Vibhishan performed funeral ceremonies for all the dead in the family. Lord Ramachandra then gave Vibhishan the right to rule Lanka and also granted him a long duration of life. The Lord delivered Sitadevi from the Ashoka forest and carried her in a flower airplane to his capital, Ayodhya, where he was received by his brother Bharat. When Lord Ramachandra entered Ayodhya, Bharat brought his wooden shoes. Vibhishan and Sugriva held a whisk and fan. Hanuman carried an umbrella. Shatrughna carried the Lord's bow and 2 quivers. And Sitadevi carried a water pot containing water from holy places. Angada carried a sword, and Jambavan, Riksharaj, carried a shield. After Lord Ramachandra, accompanied by Lord Lakshmana and Mother Sitadevi, met all his relatives, the great sage Vashishta, and throned him as king. The chapter ends with a short description of Lord Ramachandra's rule in Ayodhya. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistang Stapitang Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai. So the Lord Ramachandra appeared, it says, in Treta Yuga, like long time ago, over 1 million years ago. And it's very difficult for modern historians to understand length of time, or even philosophers and so-called scientists to understand the purpose of the Lord and his appearance. Lord Ramachandra appeared to set good example. Eka Patni, he had one wife, Sitadevi, and he performed his religious duties very carefully. So there are many stories how Kakeyi, it said that that Dasarath had 3 wives, but other places it's described that he had many wives, but they had no children. But Vasishta Muni gave a special benediction. So from Kaushalya, Lord Ramachandra was born, from Kaikeyi, Bharat, and it's from his third wife, Shatrughna. Anyway, the twins were born. So these are all Vishnu Tattva. The Lord appears like Krishna, Balarama, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. So the Lord has many, many incarnations. Like the waves of the ocean, the incarnations are coming. So the material existence has been going on since time immemorial. It's not that Lord Ramachandra just once appeared. He appears continuously. The Lord's pastimes are eternal, ever existing. Because the living entities in this material world are addicted to sense gratification, false ego, wanting to exploit or enjoy in a separate mood. The Lord facilitates by giving us material bodies in a material world. But then always He is eager to bring us back home to the kingdom of God. So we see how Lord Ramachandra appeared, how Lord Vamanadev, Lord Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, even Lord Krishna and Balarama, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In our time, we're very, very fortunate, although Kali Yuga is the worst of all the yugas. Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali Yuga, 5,000 years have passed by. It's described that everything is very inauspicious, but there's one very auspicious feature to this age of Kali Yuga. That this Kali Yuga has one auspicious thing, is the holy name of the Lord. And the holy name of the Lord is glorified throughout all the different ages. So when Lord Rama appeared as the son of King Dasarath, he broke the bow of Lord Shiva. It took 300 soldiers to carry this bow of Lord Shiva. And the ceremony of Sitadevi, she was a great princess of Adeha. And Lord Ramachandra snapped it like an elephant breaks the sugar cane. You've seen sometimes the elephants, the trucks are full of sugar cane. They stand in front of the truck and they grab a few stalks of sugar cane and they snap the sugar cane and eat it like that. So Lord Ramachandra broke like that. And on his way back to Ayodhya, Parasuram, the incarnation of the Lord, you see how the Lord interacts with himself in different moods, different incarnations. Because for us to try to understand the depth of the Lord and His pastimes is difficult. But Parasuram, because many Kshatriya kings were not behaving properly, were actually rogues and thieves and not doing their duty as kings. So Parasuram was wiping out the dynasties of the Kshatriyas at that time. And Ramachandra appeared as a king, but he pleased Parasuram by his fighting. So Kaikeyi, his youngest wife, she pleased Dasarath, and he offered a benediction. She said, I'll ask later. And some places it says that she actually wanted Lord Ramachandra to be enthroned, but then her servant was polluted to be envious of Lord Rama. And then she thought, okay, I'll ask my benediction. The day before, Lord Ramachandra is to be enthroned as the king of Ayodhya, and everyone's anticipating, all preparations are there, and everyone is very excited. They loved Ramachandra. She said, no, you install Bharat as the king of Ayodhya. And not only that, but you banish Ramachandra for 14 years, thinking, well, if my son is put in king, then Rama will get an army and cause trouble. And because the Lord, He is the most wealthy, the most beautiful, the most powerful, and the most renounced, He immediately accepted the order of Dasarath. And the king, he gave his word. So it's not that people are just going to come back on the word. No, this is foolish. I gave my word. but he was actually very, very honorable. The Kshatriyas, they took their responsibilities in a very dutiful way. So these are all lessons in Ramayana, Mahabharata. The Lord's greatness, His pastimes, but also their behavior is exemplary for us to follow and learn. So that's why Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanas tattva darshana. We accept the spiritual master. We inquire submissively. We render service. And the self-realized soul will impart knowledge of the absolute truth because he has seen the truth. It's not that simply by our academic scholarship and reading many, many books. I've read 25 versions of, Ramayana, Mahabharata, or this book and that book, the Puranas, Itihasas. I understand very clearly. No, it doesn't come by jumping up and thinking that I'm going to become a bookworm and just study. Study is good, but with proper guidance, proper association. This is why we say Patita Pavana, Srila Prabhupada, Savior of the whole universe, because Srila Prabhupada is taking the essence of all the acharyas, of all the gurus, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Srimad-Bhaga, Itihasas, Puranas, all the literature that's available to humankind, and he's boiled it down to the essence. And then for those who are fortunate enough to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada and the Krishna consciousness movement, they're very, very fortunate. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. That we're wandering up and down all around. We were great scholars. We were poverty-stricken in the street. We were animals and beasts and kings, demigods, many, many, up and down. Everything is available in God's creation. But those who are Bhagyavan, who are very fortunate, have the opportunity to hear. After the whole description of Lord Ramachandra's wonderful transcendental activities, at the very end is describing the great fortune of those who hear about the Lord, the great fortune of those who relish the pastimes of the Lord. So, Lord Ramachandra, after given the order by Dasarath, immediately he went Dandakaranya, and it says he went to many, many forests. Lakshman said, "No, I will go with you." "Okay, as you wish." Sita says, "I'll go with you." He said, "No, this is not a place for, you should stay. You have your father's home, the kingdom. You could live peacefully, comfortably, safely." He said, No. It says that the wife is like the shadow. Wherever the husband goes, she's going, and she was exemplary in her behavior, and she came with. And even it's described that Lakshman and Ram, when Surpanaka, the sister of Ravana, came in a lusty mood, they disfigured her, cut her nose, her ears, and also her army of so many thousands of powerful Rakshasas. They destroyed everyone. And Ravan, hearing about the beauty of Sita, he had Marichi. He was also a demonic personality, servant of Ravana. Ravana, he was very, very powerful, made a kingdom. They say he was making a stairway to heaven. You've heard the songs, and different persons, they feel why we should serve God. We'll make our own stairway to heaven. And all Lanka was full of gold and jewels. Prabhupada described that there was some tunnels from Brazil, and they brought to Lanka so much gold. So many stories. So when Ravana heard the beauty of Sita, he distracted. This is a pastime of the Lord, Ramachandra, to chase this golden deer. And also, by the mystical potencies, Sita also sent Lakshman, "You go too, help your brother." So Ravana took advantage. He disguised himself as a sannyasi, as a sadhu. So there are many lessons to be learned, that even corrupt demonic persons sometimes in the dress of a sadhu to gain profit, adoration, distinction. So he took Sita. Jatayu, the great devotee of the Lord, fought with Ravana. But Ravana, he injured him in such a way that Jatayu died. But Ramachandra performed the ceremony for his devotee. He's always looking after his devotees, taking care of his devotees. So it's described that he didn't, when he was going to attack or look for her, Sita, not that he went back to Ayodhya to get an army of soldiers and military phalanxes and weaponry. No, he made friends with Hanuman, Sugriva, and all the powerful monkey soldiers in the forest. And with their help and guidance, Hanuman previously actually went to Lanka. He saw the situation, understood Sita's being held captive, and they tried to capture Hanuman, but with his tail he burned the whole city. Put his tail on fire, so he can expand himself. He is the son of the wind god. He can jump and cross the ocean like that. So these are mystical powers. We were hearing last few days how the devotees have all the mystical powers. So Hanuman was using his mystical power to glorify Ramachandra. And so they are there on the shore of the ocean, and Lord Rama said he fasted for 3 days, not that he has to fast, and he was meditating on Samudra, the ocean personified, because I have to get across the ocean, but she did not come, so he became angry. He exhibited his pastime of anger. It says all the sharks and crocodiles and big animals in the sea became disturbed. So immediately, Samudra, ocean personified, came saying, "Oh, what a fool! I'm in ignorance. I didn't understand who you were, the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme proprietor." Like Arjuna, he's saying to Krishna, "You're the supreme Lord." Parang Brahma, Parang Dhamma, Pavitrang, Paramangvavan, Purushang, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adidevam, Ajam, Vibhum. Many prayers, glorification. So personified ocean was glorifying the Lord, Ramachandra. And she said, "I will help you in every which way. And just for your pastime, not that you have to, you can create a bridge so that you'll be glorified since time immemorial." Even there's some satellite pictures of the bridge of Lord Ram to Lanka. It shows from overhead. So these are not just stories or fairy tales or just somebody's imagination. So they broke mountain peaks and they threw rocks, and Krishna, he's floating so many planets in outer space, the earth, the sun, the moon, everything's floating by the Lord's grace. It's not all just falling down in the Garbhodaka ocean. So in the same way, the mountain peaks were floating. He created this bridge. And when they came to Lanka, then they started destroying all the different decorations and all the, different houses, and they said even the resting places of the pigeons, all the places. It says like in a river, like a pack of elephants that are in a river. So Ravan became very disturbed that he immediately sent all his demonic soldiers to fight. And they came with their weapons, the spears and swords and arrows and horses and elephants. At the time they had full equipment, but the monkey soldiers, Sugriva, Hanuman, Ramachandra, and all the soldiers, they were throwing just trees and mountain peaks in many ways. But because Ravana offended Mother Sita, the curse of Mother Sita, the whole army was being destroyed by Ramachandra's army. This is the power of a chaste wife, Sita, and it was understood that Ravana, he became extremely angry, and he called his son Indrajit, Kumbhakarna, this one, so many powerful personalities to come and defeat Lakshman Hanuman. There are many beautiful stories how when Lakshman was injured severely, how Hanuman went and brought all the proper herbs to rejuvenate him. He couldn't figure out which one it was, so he took the whole mountain peak and brought it for the purpose of serving Lord Ram. When Rama said, he rebuked him, he says, "You are like the stool of an animal. When the householder is away, the dog comes and steals in the same way you came and stole Mother Sita, so I will send you now you will lose your life. And so Rama took the arrow, shot in the heart of Ravana, and from all 10 heads the blood is coming, and all the followers are saying, oh, what now? What now? What will happen? So everyone was destroyed because of offending Mother Sita. Lord Rama, with his soldiers, monkey soldiers, and with his setting the example of how he was attached as a king, earthly king, to Mother Sita. He went to the place where Mother Sita was in a Ashok forest, and she was so happy to be again reunited. And all the wives of the demons, Manodari and different other, they were saying, oh Ravana, you were so cruel, you caused so much pain and anxiety to everyone. So now who will protect us? But Vibhishan, the brother of Ravana, great devotee of Lord Ram, he actually helped guide them to Lanka. And not that Ramachandra decided, oh, I'm going to take over Lanka now and enjoy the fruits of the spoils of my victory. He empowered Vibhishan to be the ruler for a kalpa, long period of time. And then a flower airplane came to bring Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, Sugriva. They all were accompanying the Lord. It said it appeared as though like the moon surrounded by stars. When he came back to his kingdom, then Bharat, who was actually just taking the food, the barley mixed in the cow urine, and he also had matted hair, just like in the forest. Ramachandra, Lakshman, they all came, and they were greeted in a very royal procession. All the priests, the soldiers, the music, and everyone was so happy. 14 years was finished, the exile back to Ayodhya. Lord Ramachandra was shaven clean, got all the matted hair and wonderfully dressed. Sita, all the brothers. When he saw all the mothers he respected, Kaikeyi, Kaushala, and all the mothers were very happy that the Supreme Lord was there. Lord Ramachandra was considered as the king, like the father of everyone, and all the citizens very much loved and respected him in that same way. So the Ramayana has many different points. One time Lord Ramachandra went incognito to see what the people really think of him and his kingdom, and he heard one householder chastising his wife who was out and about, and he says some suspicious things that, well, Mother Sita was taken by Ravana. But Lord Rama in his pastime banished Mother Sita, who took shelter of Valmiki Muni, and Lava and Kush, the twin sons of Rama, were given shelter by Valmiki, and Mother Sita entered the earth. The Lord Ramachandra was very, heartbroken. He did yagyas for thousands of years. I'm not sure the exact amount of years, but he performed different sacrifices and yagyas. So the pastimes of the Lord are very wonderful, very grand. And they're meant to actually enliven us to appreciate that by hearing about the Lord, chanting about His glories, discussing His pastimes with other devotees, in the association of devotees, in a holy place like Vrindavan Dham, under the guidance of our captain, spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is very cautious and concerned that we don't deviate from the Guru Parampara, the path of devotional service, because sometimes on our own, if we think that I can hear from this one, oh, this one has some interesting stories, and that one has a different elaboration, I should hear all the different varieties of Ramayana, and Dasharatha actually had so many hundreds of wives, and this, so many things. But here we're hearing from Shukadeva Goswami, who is giving the summary essence of Ramachandra's appearance and activities. And I'm sure there's great depth, and there's nothing wrong to hear the whole Ramayana or Mahabharata. It's wonderful. But stay focused also. Srimad-Bhagavatam is giving us the essence of the pastimes of Krishna, the reason for his appearance in Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evan Yoviti Tattvataha. If one understands why the Lord appears, his pastimes, his activities, then he's free from the cycle of birth and death. He goes back home. And that's the purpose, that we want to awaken our love for Krishna. We want to awaken our understanding of our true identity as Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas, eternal servant of Krishna. So instead of associating and wandering with all the materialists in this world who are only in pursuit of economic development and sense gratification, stay in the association of devotees who are interested in serving the Lord. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. Hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord, serving his lotus feet. And we have been given this wonderful opportunity by Srila Prabhupada to see the beauty of Sri Sri Gaura-Nitai. Today, Srila Prabhupada triumphantly was the day 46 years ago he opened up Krishna Balarama Mandir to glorify Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, to glorify their incarnation as Krishna Balaram, to glorify Lalita Vishaka and Radha Shyama Sundar with their eternal pastimes in Vrindavan Dham. Prabhupada did the first artik with a smile from ear to ear, as they said, very, very happy. But not that now our work is done. No, he said now we can begin our preaching work even more. So it wasn't that Prabhupada, you've accomplished something wonderful, now you can just go in samadhi and rest. No, he wanted to establish temples and book distribution and preaching all over the world, and very tirelessly he whipped his disciples. You'll hear from the senior devotees about the wonderful opening of Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Mandir on this glorious day of Shri Ram Navami. I'm sorry I didn't do full justice to the elaboration of the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. I'm sure for days now the pastimes have been discussed in Balaram Hall, and I'm sure that there are many Ram devotees who could give more in-depth elaboration. But it was just a summary of my limited understanding of how we can together glorify the Lord, remember the Lord in his pastimes, glorify the devotees like Srila Prabhupada, who are giving us a chance for this eternal life in Sri Vrindavan Dham, going back home, back to the kingdom of God. So we have many speakers. Somehow, as more speakers, it gets better, you know. We save the best for last. So start with the neophytes, and then the more advanced devotees can give us more of Prabhupada's mercy. Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So for the rest of the world, it's Ram Navami. For us, it's the birthday of Nitai Gaur Sundar, Sri Sri Krishna Balarama, and Sri Sri Radha Shyam Sundar Lalita Visakha. So, and it's nice to be back here at Prabhupada's lotus feet. Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyanangana Shalakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Aradana Srinandantai Ridam Yache Puna Puna Srimad Rupa Padam Bhujo Dulisyam Janmajanmani Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyevascha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Sisi Gornitai ki, Sisi Krishna Baldao Dono Bhaiya ki, Sisi Radha Shamsundar Lalita Visakha ki. So that particular year, 1975, they extended the Mayapur Vrindavan festival because Ram Navami is after Gaur Purnima. So we did a program in Jagannath Puri, then we had a big program Pandal program with Prabhupada in Hyderabad. Then from Hyderabad, we came here to Krishna Balaram Mandir for the opening ceremony. And it was very amazing for all of us because just here in this corner of the courtyard, they made a grass yagyashala. Now most of us had never seen such a thing. We had this grass yagyashala and different platforms with different water pots with so many different colored threads spun around them, and we had never seen such a thing. We just assumed that this was all different demigods. All these water pots were all different demigods. And they would, periodically they would call Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would sit, because Prabhupada had the yagya done by the Brishbazi Brahmins. Because Prabhupada wanted to make sure that the Vrindavan Vasis would accept that Krishna Balaram are their deities. So they were established by their men. Because Prabhupada wanted very endearing to the people of Vrindavan, so he wanted to please them by letting their, we had big, just like this Sikha I have, there was one with big Sikha and big, very fat Brahmins. So they would bring Prabhupada here and have him perform different ceremonies. Meanwhile, Prabhupada had started 24-hour kirtan. And he said, actually, our 24-hour kirtan is the real installation. So this was something new for us, 24-hour kirtan. Somehow we managed to organize it, and it was very nice. But I remember one day, it was very special, because it was very early in April, it was just after March, and we just saw March practically, there was no cloud in the sky at all. But that particular one day during the festival, I don't remember which day it was, there was clouds, very heavy clouds. And they brought Prabhupada here to the Yagyashala, and they were doing all these different ceremonies. And to me it seemed like all the clouds were swirling around the courtyard of Krishna Balaram Mandir. Because the clouds there was windy, so they were moving around and around. It seemed like the center of the whole circle that the clouds were doing was right here. It felt like to me that all the demigods had come to see Prabhupada establish Krishna Balaram Mandir that day. It was very interesting because ordinarily, today we have some clouds, but ordinarily March means no clouds, just sun and sun. And they had deities all just sitting here on the steps, standing here on the steps, and they had this wax over their eyes. We'd never seen all these things. For us, installation was very simple. We just did a fire yagya and abhishek and like that. But they did all these elaborate ceremonies. And day before, as I recall, we had a procession through the streets of Vrindavan. We had the little deities on a cart of some sort, and Prabhupada was there, so there was a huge bamboo forest around Prabhupada. And we went through the town of Vrindavan, and all the Brishbasis were very happy that Prabhupada was opening this Krishna Balaram Mandir. So we went through all the different bazaars, people gave different offerings, and we had this wonderful kirtans. Those were so ecstatic kirtans. All the old kirtan leaders were there, and very ecstatic kirtans. We did this. Then finally, the day of the installation, they had all the deities just standing here on the on the steps. There wasn't any trays underneath. Just like now, we have a nice gomukh tray for each set of altars. Today we'll have Abhishek on all 3 altars for all 3 deities. It's very wonderful. So they didn't have that. I don't remember how we collected all the Charanamrit. It was just, the deities were just standing here on the marble. And the Brahmins, they were very happy. To us it was like a very serious thing. And they were just, this is like Krishna and Balarama, they're friends, so they were just doing this. They had these clay pots and they would just throw some milk or some honey, or I guess the honey they had to pour, but otherwise they're just throwing it like this, and they're a very jolly mood. They're having a very wonderful time. So then finally, they somehow, after the Abhishek, they got the deities onto the altars. And I don't remember, but I guess during that time, during the dressing and decoration and bhog ceremony and everything, I think they had different lectures, all the great personalities of Vrindavan had come, except for one guy. He was the head of all the Mayavadis of Vrindavan, Karpatri Maharaj. But Prabhupada wanted him to come very ardently. He sent Yasomati Nandan every day, but he was very upset that Prabhupada was initiating non-Indians and non-Brahmins as Brahmins. Because the Mayavadis, there's so many scriptures that explain that actually you have to be from India, you have to be from a Brahmin family. So many things are there in the scriptures. But our Goswamis, Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipinu, Saddharma, they have looked for the Saddharma. The Saddharma, the eternal Dharma, is that anyone from any part of the world that is practiced, that has got the gun. Krishna in Bhagavad-Gita, he says guna karma. He doesn't say janma karma. He said guna karma vibhagasa. Who's acting on and performing the activities of a Brahmin, he's a Brahmin. So Prabhupada would train Yasomati Nanda with so many arguments from the scripture, and he would go every day to Karpatri Maharaj, and Karpatri Maharaj would argue back, and then Yasa would come back and tell what his arguments, and Prabhupada would give other arguments, and he'd go back. And finally one day Karpatri Maharaj said, "Your Guru Maharaj has trained you very nicely." He was surprised. But finally he snuck out of it, because Mayavadis are very slippery, because everything is one, so they can easily slip out of their arguments. He said, just like it says sometimes we read that he was a lion-like man. Doesn't mean that he was a lion, he was like a lion. So they cannot be Brahmins, but they can be like a Brahmin. And that much he accepted for Prabhupada, but he didn't come. But many, all the great sadhus of Neem Karoli Baba and Brahmdas Shastri and all the great personalities of Vrindavan came and glorified Prabhupada. Some God brothers also came and they glorified Prabhupada. Then afterwards there was Artik. And that Artik I will never forget, because Prabhupada was doing the Artik for Krishna and Balarama. And every time he would offer one article, he would turn around and offer it to the devotees. He had this smile of full satisfaction. Well, first of all, as soon as the doors opened, everybody just rushed forward. And I was just completely swept off my feet. And I was just going this way and that way, and my feet weren't even touching the floor. And I was freaking out because I was just a young boy those days, and I read so many articles about people getting crushed and stampedes and things like that in these third world countries. So I was just freaking out, and I just, somehow or other, Krishna gave me some, just like whenever, sometimes there's an emergency, just like a car runs over the child, somehow the mother picks up the car, somehow they have some special energy that Krishna makes. So I just pushed my way out of the mandap here into the courtyard so I wouldn't get crushed to death. I was sure I was going to die. So then I turned around and watched, and every time Prabhupada would turn around, his smile would get bigger. And then finally we had that, just like on the front of our temple, we had that, when he came to the peacock fan, that was full satisfaction. Prabhupada was offering, he was so satisfied that he established this beautiful, this is the most beautiful, there's temples that may be more opulent in Vrindavan, but this is the most beautiful temple in all of Vrindavan, and Prabhupada was so satisfied that he established Sri Sri Gaura-Nitai, Sri Sri Krishna Balarama, Sri Sri Radha Shyam on this day 46 years ago. And then we had a wonderful feast, and Prabhupada fed practically all the Brahmins of Vrindavan. Prabhupada loved prasad distribution. Usually we do a big sadhu feast, but all the sadhus are in Kumbh Mela. So this year we're not doing the sadhu feast. But Prabhupada was very, very happy. Anyway, there's so many people here to speak. This is just a few glimpses that I remember from 46 years ago. Now the memory's getting old. So, Hare Krishna. Sri Sri Krishna Balarama ki! Sri Sri Gaura-Nitai ki! Sri Sri Radha Shyam Sundar Lalita Visakha ki! Srila Prabhupada ki! Hare Krishna.
A lot. Okay. Om Ajnana Timurandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatharine. So Panchagoda, he asked us to particularly speak about the glories of Lord Ram, because a lot of times on this auspicious day, we are just talking about the grand opening and we forget that Lord Ramachandra appeared on this day. So there's a book written by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Navadvip Mahatmya. And as Nityananda Prabhu was taking little Jiva Goswami around Navadvip, he came to one of the islands called Modadruma Dweep, to a village called Mamagachi. And Nityananda Prabhu told Jiva Goswami that here in Modadruma Dweep is Ayodhya. And when Ramachandra, Sita, and Lakshman were banished to the forest, they came to stay here. They built a hut under a beautiful big banyan tree there. And while they were sitting there, Lord Ramachandra, in all of his beauty as a brahmachari with his matted locks and his beautiful green complexion, he began to smile. So Sitadevi asked Ramachandra, why are you smiling? And he said, in the wonderful Kali Yuga that's about to come, I will appear as the son of Sitadevi in the home of Jagannath Mishra. And I will spread the glories of the holy name. I will take sannyas, and I will leave my mother with my wife crying in her arms. And I will go and preach all over Bharat. So Sitadevi asked Ramachandra, why would you cause such misery to your wife and your mother to make them cry? And then Ramachandra, he laughed and he said, you know everything, but you're asking me just for the benefit of others. He said there's two ways to associate with the Supreme Lord that the devotees are always aspiring for. One is sambhog and the other is vipralamba. Sambhog is when you're in direct relation with the Lord, and vipralamba is when you're separated from the Lord and you're just meditating on when you can be with Him again. So this vipralamba I award to my devotees, because when they're feeling the separation from my presence, when we meet again, their pleasure is 1,000,000 times magnified. So my wife, you will actually become my wife, Vishnu Priya, in this incarnation, and you will worship me in a deity form. That deity is still there in Navadvip. And I will worship you in a golden deity form when we're separated in our Leela as Ramachandra. So this Leela of Shri Shri Gaurnitai, they are none different from Shri Shri Ramachandra and Lakshmanji, because they always travel together. Whenever Krishna decides to appear, his first expansion comes along with him. Lord Brahma, he explains in the Brahma Samhita, Ramadi Murtishu Kala Niyamena Tishtan. So when Krishna, who is the original Supreme Lord, expands himself, all of his incarnations are equally powerful. But Krishna is the original of all the incarnations. Just as the example given, you have one candle, and that one candle can light other candles. And once those candles are lit, they're just as powerful as the original candle. So Ramachandra, he is one of the expansions of the original Sri Krishna Govinda. So here we have, by the mercy of Krishna, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we have as the predominating deities in the center, Krishna and Balaram. Krishna and Balaram are none different from Ramachandra and Lakshman. But Prabhupada established Krishna and Balaram as the main deities of this temple because he saw that within Vrindavan, many of the temples were simply Radha Krishna because that's the mood, Jai Radhe. The Brijbasis, they take shelter of Radharani because they know that if they get Radharani's mercy, then Krishna will accept them. And there are very few Krishna Balaram temples, only in a few of their pastime places. So he wanted to establish Krishna Balaram as the main deities. And he put on the first altar Shri Shri Gaurnitai, so that everyone could understand that Gaurnitai are none different from Krishna and Balaram. Without the mercy of Gaurnitai, we cannot understand the pastimes of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. So in that way, by taking shelter of Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga in the first altar, then we can progress on to understanding the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram. Now the Srimad-Bhagavatam is all about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram. That was the original question that was asked by the sages. They wanted to hear the pastimes of Rama and Keshava and all of their incarnations. So we hear in the daytime how Krishna and Balaram had their pastimes, and this Modadruma Dweep is also non-different from the forest of Bandiravan, where Krishna and Balaram used to herd the cows with their cowherd boyfriends. And then as we go on, we come to the supreme, sublime worship of Shri Shri Radha Shyamsundar with their two principal gopis of Lalita and Vishaka. Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to worship the Astasakis along with Radha Krishna here, but because the altars had already been carved, and they had been carved for just 4 deities, only 4 deities are here on the altar. But at the time of the installation, Prabhupada, he wanted, because his spiritual master had done a lot of preaching all over India through the via medium of dioramas. Dioramas are a special art you can see during Durga Puja, how they make these clay murtis of Durga Devi and all of the different associates. So in Bengal, they're very expert at making clay murtis with wood and then mud, the clay, and painting them very beautifully. So very early, maybe it was 1973, Prabhupada chose his best artists and sent them to Bengal to learn this art so that we could make these diorama preaching facilities all over ISKCON. And before the grand opening, they came here. Now it just so happens that in 1974 there was a Purushottam Mass in July, August. So that put Ram Navami very, very ahead in the year of 1975. So the grand opening, at the request of many of the associates of Prabhupada from Gaudiya Math and other places, they requested that this grand opening be spread over many days, not just one day. So there was a festival actually going on from the 16th up to the 20th. And the grand opening of Ram Navami was on April 20th. So it almost coincides with what we're experiencing now. It was a hot time. And the devotees, normally the devotees would come for 2 weeks for the Navadvip Mandal festival in Mayapur, and then they would come here for 2 weeks. But this time, we know Gaur Purnima was so long ago, and now they had to wait all the way until Ram Navami time. It was way over a month. 6 weeks they had to stay in India. They had to have special visas. So with all that time in between, they were able to go to different preaching programs, as Dinabandhu Prabhu explained. So because Prabhupada wanted these Dasa Sakhi deities, the artists came here and they had time. Excuse me. They had time because they came here in 1974 and they wanted to surprise Srila Prabhupada. So they stayed here for a few months and they made exquisite deities of 6 more gopis. And these gopis, when Srila Prabhupada came here in 1974 and he entered his home for the first time, he was expecting there would be the grand opening in 74. He walked into his room and he saw these beautiful deities and tears came to his eyes. And he was so happy. So these additional gopis were also on the altar along with the Radha Shamsundar and Lalita Vishaka. They were all there at the same time at the grand opening. Now, Srila Prabhupada, he had prepared this idea of opening this grand temple in Vrindavan. It first manifested when he first went to America in the mid-60s, because he was attracting young people and he knew that the people in Vrindavan would not readily accept these foreign Vaishnavas. So he realized he needed his own place for his students. So the first thing he did was he wrote to the Goswamis at the Radha Damodar temple and offered to take over all the Seva Puja, completely maintain the temple, and have his disciples come and live there also. They refused flatly. They didn't want to lose the Seva of the Radha Damodar temple, nor did they want to give any land or anything for Prabhupada to build a temple. So Prabhupada, he had to search around. He was then looking for property here in Vrindavan. And he heard that the Lakshmi Rani Kunj was for sale. That's the beautiful palace at Keshigarh. So in 1970, when the devotees first came here with Srila Prabhupada, it took them 1 year before Prabhupada brought them to Vrindavan. They traveled to all different cities preaching with Prabhupada from 1970 to 1971. But he sent Guru Das here to try to acquire the Lakshmi Rani Kunj palace, to make a temple. And they were in negotiation with the Maharaj of Bharat, the Maharaj of Bharatpur. The Maharaj of Bharatpur, he was ready to give that palace. But the devotees, inadvertently, they offended the Maharaj. He had sent a beautiful silver Singhasan for the deities, and he had sent it there for the devotees when they were at the Radha Damodar temple. And one of the devotees, he refused to accept it. He thought they were going to have to pay for it. So he sent that Singhasan back to the Maharaj of Bharatpur. And since that experience of being offended by the devotees, the Maharaja Bharatpur refused to give that palace. So again, Prabhupada, he was here in India then with the devotees, the core devotees, such as Gopal Prabhu, and still there was no place to make a temple. So when Prabhupada would come here, he would stay at the Radha Damodar temple, and at that time, when he finally did bring the devotees, there were some very, very influential and wealthy devotees who lived in an area behind Loy Bazaar. It's where the rich people used to live. It's called Govindabag. It used to be part of the Govindaji temple's Bagicha, but just like we see here in Vrindavan, the land gets turned into residential quarters by selling off the different properties. So there was a couple who lived there just near Radha Damodar temple behind Loy Bazaar. They were Sarafs. They were Marwadis, and they had land in Guwahati, they had land here, of course they had their ancestral land in Rajasthan, and they were very attracted to Srila Prabhupada and his foreign disciples. And they would invite Prabhupada and the disciples to come to their home for kirtan. So one day Prabhupada was conversing with them, and he was saying that I would like to get some land here in Vrindavan. Do you know anywhere I could get some land to build a temple? And Kashi Prasad Saraf, he said, well, we have land. You can see that land if you like. So he brought Prabhupada here to see this property of 1 acre. And Prabhupada, although it was very far at that time, this was jungle at the time, Prabhupada said, yes, this is perfect. This is the place where Krishna Balaram used to herd the cows, Raman Reti. So those devotees who were alive, how many devotees were alive in 1970s? Not too, no, nobody's raising their hands. So. You're right. So in the 1970s even, this land, this whole area was pristine, white sands, cows herding or everywhere. You had to watch out for the cows because there were so many cows. And the Parikrama Marg was all white sands. It was so beautiful here at Raman Reti. It was so beautiful that all of the people who lived in Vrindavan, they would come on this little Chatikar road, which it was just about 5 feet wide at the time, on their morning walks, just to come out here, to get out of the city and see the beauty of the area. So Prabhupada, he wanted this land. And Kashi Prasad, he said, well, it's in the name of my wife, we have to wait till she comes. So that was in November, they had to wait till March. And in March, when Gita Devi came, she has beautiful deities named Radha Kunja Bihari. They came here once on a Ram Navami, on the 40th anniversary. And if anyone wants to see those deities, she's staying here at Keshav Kunj now to be close to our Krishna Balaram temple. Every Friday we still go for kirtan, for Radha Kunja Bihari. So you're all welcome to come and take darshan of Radha Kunja Bihari and meet Gita Devi before she leaves this world and goes back to Godhead. So she said she can't decide who to give the land to because so many different Vaishnavas are asking her for this land. So our temple president at the time was Kiradakshai Vishnu Das. So she said, I'll put 2 pieces of paper, one that says yes and one that says no. I'll put them at the feet of my Kunja Bihari, and you pick one of the papers. And whatever Kunja Bihari has decided, that's what I decide. So Kiradakshai Vishnu, by the supreme mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Sri Krishna, he picked the paper, and when he opened up the paper said, huh. So she gave this land to Srila Prabhupada openly. No problem whatsoever. Except her husband wanted the first 26 feet because he wanted to, Marwari, they wanted to do some business, maybe open a petrol pump. So he wouldn't give the first 26 feet. where Prabhupada's Samadhi is now established. And from where our temple is, that's why our temple is so far back, because that 26 feet didn't belong to ISKCON. But one day, Srila Prabhupada, he was sitting in his garden, and he called Gita Devi. Her husband had gone to Govardhan to see his guru. And he said, Gita Devi, your Lala, we're building this beautiful temple for him. Now how can you have a temple without a gate? How will the people enter? You can't have them come just on the side like that. This is for your beloved, your son. So she agreed. And she signed over those 26 feet to Srila Prabhupada. Written, handwritten. We locked it up in the safe and then they lost the key. So, that land was given by Gita Devi. But when the husband came back from Govardhan, he was so angry with her that he made a court case against ISKCON, that no, we will not give this land. So the grand opening took place. At that time we had all of the construction going on. We had the huts with the cement, and Prabhupada wanted a well made there. Our one generator, yes, one generator, because electricity was very rare in those days. And then Prabhupada wanted a well made underneath the museum on the other side is that original well, and that well was sweet water, which was amazing because the water is very salty here in Ramanreti from all the gopis' tears. So that land, up until, they made a beautiful fountain and staircase, but the court case was going on. So, to make a long story short, finally, that land came into our property of ISKCON. We have Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi there, his beautiful museum there, and we have this beautiful temple. So the 1 week celebration of the grand opening, it took years to get all of the memories of all the devotees collected, and then we made a beautiful book describing Srila Prabhupada and the effort that he took up until his last breath to see that this temple was maintained and managed properly in his absence. So now we'll let the other devotees describe more of their memories of the grand opening. Hare Krishna.
Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu vayevacha patit pavan pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo maha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane. Srila Prabhupada ki. Today is the anniversary of the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple, which eventually happened. That was 46 years ago. "46 years ago, the Krishna Balaram temple opened. In Braj, in the Vrindavan area, the most famous devotee is Radharani. And she is overflowing with love for Krishna. And this level of love, a small smidgen, a small portion, is what devotees aspire to. But in India, the most famous devotee is Hanuman. And Hanuman's seva to Lord Ramachandra is most famous. All over India there are temples of Hanumanji. Hanuman's devotion and his perseverance are very, very famous. Srila Prabhupada was a great devotee, and he too was perseverant by going to the Western countries, by going to New York, by inspiring individuals there to take up the path of bhakti, for them to be productive. Prabhupada would always say, work now, samadhi later. And eventually for the Krishna Balarama temple, the plans to be made and the temple to be built. Hanuman, when he went to Lanka to deliver the token, the ring, to let Sita know that help was on the way, then he set fire to Lanka, to Ravana's kingdom. But Srila Prabhupada, when he went to New York, he enlightened individuals there, and he started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the Hare Krishna movement, and encouraged his young disciples to go to different places in the world where they would start Vaishnavism, where they would start the process of Krishna consciousness, they would start bhakti-yoga, and invite members of the public to participate. And in this way, the whole Hare Krishna movement has grown all over the world. Srila Prabhupada took on a great task to personally inspire hundreds, then thousands of different devotees, that they would print his books, that they would help him with his translation, with his publications, distribute the books, generate funds. And he made a formula that half of the profits from BBT, from the book fund, would come to India and would help to fund the temples, principally in Mayapur and Vrindavan. When Gunarnavar and myself, when we first came to India, as Devashakti Mataji just said, it was jungle here in Vrindavan. We flew into India on a one-way ticket. We made our way to the train station. We got a train to Mathura. We had no idea where the devotees were. We knew there were devotees here, Jamuna and Gurudas principally, but we had no idea where they were. The Radha Damodar temple, we didn't know where it was. And a very kind gentleman, he was on the train. We traveled second class. In those days there was first class, second class, and third class. We traveled, and a nice gentleman from the Ramakrishna mission, a doctor, he realized we were just young boys, didn't know what we were doing. So he took us to the Ramakrishna hospital, and he gave us a bed in one of the wards. So in one of the wards, there was a number of beds. He gave us a bed. He gave us some breakfast in the morning. He summons the rickshaw, and the rickshaw was gone all over Vrindavan for hours trying to, has anyone seen any foreign people? Nobody. And eventually we came to the Radha Damodar temple, and the devotees were living upstairs above Srila Prabhupada's room. And Jamuna Devi, she was sitting on the stairway, she was just chanting, and then she saw us. So we arrived in Vrindavan. We stayed there for some time, above, in the rooms above, and each day we would have Harinam Kirtan. Along the main road to here in Vrindavan, there was the piece of land there, and then we would make our way back along the sandy Parakram path that you've all seen in all of those pictures. When the temple started to be built, at that time, for an American dollar, you could get 10 rupees. So each American cent was worth 10 paisa. And 10 paisa was the cost of a brick. Now they're 5 or 6 rupees for a house brick. But in those days, a house brick cost 10 paisa. So for every single American cent that devotees in the West collected, that was capable of building a house brick. So book sale by book sale, contribution by contribution, the money started coming in to build the temple. So literally thousands of devotees all over the world, they helped to finance and create, under Srila Prabhupada's guidance and his ingenuity, the funding for the Krishna Balaram temple. So many devotees have helped to create this. Today's Lord Ram's appearance day. The Ramayana is 24,000 verses. Sukadeva Goswami summarizes the Ramayana in 50 verses, 55 verses, in the 10th chapter of the 9th canto. So he has summarized in 50 verses, which Valmiki describes in 24,000 verses. So there's many stories, many adventures, as Panchagoda Prabhu pointed out, and the Ram devotees are very familiar with all of these different stories. There is one story in the Ramayana in which a small bird, he's also trying to help to build the bridge to Lanka. So with his little beak, taking a few grains of sand, he's putting the sand in the ocean, and someone is wondering, what are you doing? Why do you think this will help? But Lord Ram said no. He said, everything has helped. And he very much appreciated the effort of the little bird in helping him to achieve his task of building the bridge to Lanka. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada was very happy, even indebted to all of the different devotees who participated in some small way throughout the world to help creating this wonderful Krishna Balaram temple. In those days, India wasn't very productive. It was much more of a third world country than it is today. And there was a big shortage of cement and steel. The cement factories and the steel mills, they were very limited in their output. And as a result, it was rationed. One had to make a special application to the district magistrate to get some of the cement and some of the steel, which was part of the quota for that particular district. So here in Mayapur, also here in Vrindavan, we had to apply to the district magistrate, you please give us cement and steel to help build our temple. Then when we did get allocation of cement or steel, we had to go to the mill and collect it. It was weighed and counted and so on. We had to hire a truck to bring it back. And I've been on top of trucks that we had to ride on the top of the truck to safeguard the cement. And along the way, as he stopped in towns and villages, the drivers would try to sell the cement to people. We have cement, do you want to buy cement? We're giving it for so much. And people would be very keen because they couldn't get cement. And they would try to pull the cement off the back. And we used to have to whack them with a stick that you can't, we need this cement. And there was an ongoing fight. And many times, devotees came back after a couple of days on the truck. They were exasperated, so they would demand this people shouldn't get paid. Why, they're just cheaters, they're thieves. And devotees would be very upset, having been on the truck and the driver's trying to sell the load before he even gets there, and then whatever you get, that is India. So it was very difficult in those days. The summers were very hot. There was often no electricity. The winters were very cold. We just had to pump water right out of the hand pump, right out the ground to take our bath. There was no heated water. There was no bathrooms. It was just very austere. Practically speaking, we were just living on the land. It was very difficult. I remember one time Gunanavar, he had to do some official business in Mathura, and the only option for Mathura is you walk, you get on a bicycle, or you take a rickshaw. And in those days, the rickshaw to Mathura, it took about an hour and a half to get there. It was 2 rupees and 50 paisa to go on the rickshaw. So it was the summertime, and Gunanavar had to go, and he was on the rickshaw, and the hot wind was blowing the loo, and Gunanavar became so dehydrated, he actually fell unconscious off the rickshaw. He just fell on the side of the road. It was sandy, but he just fell and he was unconscious. So some local people, knowing that foreigners were building a temple, they rushed, and one man, he squeezed an orange, and he just applied the orange to Gunanavar's lips, and saying, this is the only thing that can revive you when you're unconscious like this, just practically in a coma, just from being dehydrated. He says the only thing that can. So there was a lot of austerity. There was a lot of different difficulties that people underwent. We underwent these difficulties gladly because it was for Srila Prabhupada. No one really had any idea what we were doing or what was going on. Brahmananda Prabhu said that at the first Mayapur festival, just before Gaur Purnima, I think it was the day before Gaur Purnima, Prabhupada summons them to his room in Mayapur and said, we should have a Pandau program in Vrindavan. Like Dinabandhu was saying, we had a Pandau program in Hyderabad, and devotees visited Puri. Well, that was Prabhupada's plan, that we would have Mayapur festival in Mayapur, and we would celebrate Ram Navami here in Vrindavan, and between we would go to different places for pandals. I went to the Delhi pandal, there was a pandal there, and all the devotees would do, so you'd have a couple of hundred devotees creating a big impression. We went to Hyderabad, and then in this way so many people would get interest, newspaper. It was actually a very, very good publicity scheme that Prabhupada. So this was he told Brahmananda for the first time, he said, we should have a Pandau program in Bombay. He said, go immediately, talk to our life members and arrange a Pandau program. So Brahmananda, he said he was on the train from Krishnagar to Selda, and he was thinking to himself, I wonder what's a Pandau program? So he went and they said, no, go and see the Pandawala and explain what you want, and he wanted something nice. So he went to the Pandawala and he said, okay, I want this, how much will this be? And he gave a deposit. And so when Srila Prabhupada came, and he was walking around the pandal and looking and inspecting and see if it suited our needs. And he said to Brahmananda, he said, how much did you pay? And Brahmananda, he was very clever, he was a New Yorker, he was used to bargaining and so on. So he said, well, Prabhupada, he said, the man asked for 30,000 rupees. He said, but I bargained him and got it for 20,000. And Prabhupada said, did you give him any money? And he said, yeah. He said, I gave him 2,000 rupees deposit. And Prabhupada said to some, go tell the Pandawala I want to see him. So the Pandawala came, and he was very wary. And they started talking, and then in Hindi, and eventually Prabhupada was shouting at the man. And so the man opened his thing and got his money, and he gave Prabhupada 1,000 rupees, and Prabhupada was talking to him more, but so Brahmananda said, what's going on? Prabhupada said the proper price for a pandal of this quality and this dimensions is 800 rupees. He said, but already you have given him 2,000. So he's very reluctant to give for 800. And he said, no, he insists that his costs are 1,000. So he has returned 1,000, and he has cheated us out of 200 rupees. So this was we had no idea what we were doing. We were just learning as we went along. There's just so many stories of just misunderstanding. We didn't know the language. People were in a bargaining system. There was no such thing as a fixed price. It was whatever they could get. We were just, it was very, very adventurous to be in India at that time and to help with the in the Bhagavatam, in this section, chapter 10, Prabhupada describes that there are two types of strength. He says there is Purushakara. This is the strength that we have from our own intelligence and from our own power. And he said also there's Daiva strength. And Daiva strength is transcendental strength. This is being empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I think it's fair to say that what we achieved in those days and the determination we had and the endurance for the austere conditions, and it was through the Shakti that we received from Srila Prabhupada, this divine empowerment that something would manifest. And many, many devotees came and went. Many, there was a big turnover. I remember one devotee, he flew in, he had to look around, he didn't leave the airport, and he just stayed there till the next flight home. And typically people would last for 6 weeks. They would have 2 weeks becoming accustomed to the heat. Then they would have 2 weeks trying to enjoy all the different prasadam, especially going to the market, and then they would be sick, and after 6 weeks they would just go back again. So there was very, very few people who actually stayed. We had a huge turnover of devotees, but somehow or other certain devotees stayed. Here in Vrindavan, Sorabi and Gunanavar were a famous team. They go on very well together. Sorabi did the drawings. Gunanavar handled the labor. And then slowly, bit by bit, day by day, the temple became manifest. In the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 8, verse 7, it says, Manu smara yudhyacha. Krishna tells Arjun, think of me and fight. So this fight, this determination, this will to help Srila Prabhupada to do something just day by day, enduring the conditions, this was on account of Srila Prabhupada's encouragement and our wanting to please Srila Prabhupada and to be part of something that was manifesting. And even the farmers in Vrindavan, they would go to Vrindavan with their bullock cart to sell their vegetables, and then they would sell them. Still there's the mundi, where they auction their vegetables for whatever they could, right there in Loy Bazaar. And on the way back, they would stop, and for half an hour or an hour, they would carry bricks, they would do something just as a donation, just because they knew the potency of building a temple in Vrindavan. It says anyone who builds a temple in Vrindavan, their journey back to the spiritual world is absolutely guaranteed. So these people, they knew this, they would be eager to help. What to speak of all the hundreds, the thousands of Srila Prabhupada's disciples who helped participate in this. In the Bhagavatam, 12:351, as Panchagoda Prabhu said, the verse says that this Kali Yuga is full of faults. Absolutely wall to wall, an ocean of faults, Srila Prabhupada described it as. But there is one redeeming factor, that in Kali Yuga there is special potency to chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And simply by chanting the Maha Mantra sincerely, and Prabhupada describes without the 10 offenses, then one can free oneself from material entanglement, and one can go back to home, back to Godhead. In this section on Lord Ram, in the Bhagavatam, in this summary of verses, Srila Prabhupada says in one of the purports, he says, it's 9/11/22. Srila Prabhupada says, after giving up the body, the devotees who become perfect in devotional service enter that particular universe where Lord Ramachandra or Lord Krishna is engaged in his pastimes. Then, after being trained to serve the Lord in various capacities in the Prakata Lila, the devotee is finally promoted to Sanatan Dhamma, the supreme abode in the spiritual world. So, all of the participants and all of us here who are undertaking the process of bhakti-yoga, who are undergoing the purification process and developing love for Krishna, then we can go on to be with Lord Krishna in some other universe where the Lord's pastimes are taking place. And there, as Srila Prabhupada describes, perfect our service, so then we can go back home, back to the spiritual world. So thousands of devotees are eligible for this. The devotees who Srila Prabhupada first met in New York, the devotees who went to from different places who participated in the ISKCON movement, all of you here, all of the children, all of the grandchildren, all of the future people who participate in Krishna consciousness, by undertaking this process sincerely, we can all go back to the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada even says, yes, there's an ISKCON in the spiritual world. There's 9 processes of bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. 9 different processes, and if we apply ourselves to these processes sincerely, if we have as our motivation the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, if we can give up being self-centered, give up having some desire for our own acquisitions, if we participate in Namruchi, like the 24-hour Kirtan boys are doing, Jiva-daya, service to the whole of humanity, by giving them Krishna consciousness, and by Vaishnav Seva. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told the people in his mat that every day you should do 3 sevas for some of the other devotees. Not your prescribed seva. You're serving prasadam, you're cooking prasadam, you're making whatever, but something extra. Do something extra and cultivate this mood of Vaishnav Seva. For by Vaishnav Seva, by Namruchi, by Jiva-daya, by following in the footsteps of the Acharyas, we can go back home, back to Godhead, and sadly leave behind this wonderful, wonderful temple of Krishna Balarama. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Namo Om Vishnuvedaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvise Shasumivadi Viskachite Satane. So all of us are very fortunate to be here. Some of us may not fully realize how fortunate we are to have this opportunity. We know that Bhagavad-Gita says that after many births and deaths, by the mercy of a pure, liberated soul, one receives the proper knowledge and guidance to be able to go back to the kingdom of God. Srila Prabhupada was our Savior, and from him we learned many, many, many things. He was full of determination to satisfy the desires of his Guru Maharaj. So much so that at his elderly age, we know that he crossed the ocean penniless, and with his Shakti, or with his mercy from his Guru Maharaj and Lord Chaitanya, he began this international society for Krishna consciousness. So he had visions which we, in the very beginning, we had no idea of the vastness of his visions for ISKCON. And he brought a group of us here to India in 1970. And at that time, of course, we had no facilities. Every night we had to wonder where we were going to sleep. But we faithfully followed Srila Prabhupada, and by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, all of our needs were always taken care of. Accommodations were provided, food was there. Not always the most comfortable traveling conditions or things such as that, but this small band of devotees, they had determination to help Srila Prabhupada in his mission to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. For me personally, I didn't come to Vrindavan until the first time was 1993. So we know that in Lord Chaitanya's group of associates, Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami were the first devotees sent to Vrindavan to renovate or rediscover the places where Lord Krishna carried on his pastimes. But as we were journeying in the early days in 1970, Prabhupada had made a decision that he was going to bring everyone, all of us, to Vrindavan. And for me, this was so exciting. I was overwhelmed with joy knowing that I was going to be able to come here to Vrindavan and experience the birthplace of Lord Krishna. So my heart and my feelings were full of joy, knowing that soon I would be here in Vrindavan. So at that time we were traveling by train, and our train had stopped at Mathura, and they were someone had gone out and was arranging for tangas. Tangas is a horse-drawn carriage, so at that time there was no rickshaws and anything, and the only way to get here would be by tanga. So Prabhupada was sitting in his room in the train, and someone had gone out to arrange tangas, and I was walking back and forth on the platform in Mathura station, and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to Vrindavan, I'm going to Vrindavan, I'm going to Vrindavan. And then somebody came to me and said, Srila Prabhupada wants to see you. And so I went into Srila Prabhupada's room, his in the train, and there were a couple other devotees there, Guru Das and Jamuna and Giriraj, and one boy named Bruce, who later became Bhanu Swami, but he hadn't been initiated. And Prabhupada told us, he says, I want you devotees to go to Delhi. So I was kind of heartbroken knowing that, oh, now I can't go to Vrindavan, I have to go to Delhi. But our priority, individually or collectively, I can speak more as an individual, was to fulfill the desires of the Guru Maharaj, to make him happy. And so reluctantly we went to Delhi without any facilities, no money, nothing. And as always, Krishna, he took care of us. We were able to meet with some very influential people in India, even Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India. We met with her, and eventually we rejoined the groups of devotees. And from that point, I had been wondering, when Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON, he called it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So I wondered why he chose these words, because at that time we had just a few temples. Most of them were in the United States, a couple in Canada, and one in England. And so this didn't seem like an international society. But when we went to our first Kumbh Mela festival, Prabhupada was reading letters to us before emails or before telephones, all of these things. And so the only way was by handwritten or typed letters. And the letter was just after they had formulated the GBC. And the GBC for this part of the world in Asia was Bali Mardan. And Bali Mardan told Prabhupada, he said that Singapore would be a good place to start a Krishna conscious temple. So it brought excitement to Srila Prabhupada, and he put down the letter and he looked at us like you're sitting here. There wasn't this many of us there. And Prabhupada said, "So, who will go?" And the time that elapsed after Srila Prabhupada said that was only a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity to me, and I was waiting for someone such as, Brahmananda or someone who was more senior than me to volunteer, and no one said anything. So, and I said, "Why isn't someone volunteering?" And then I told Srila Prabhupada, I raised my hand, "Prabhupada, I'll go." And then he said, "Yes, very good. You will leave immediately." And then after that, another devotee says, "Prabhupada, I'll go to Tehran." I think it was Atreya Rishi was the first devotee to go to there. And then some other devotee said, "I'll go to Italy." And then some other devotees, "I'll go here, I'll go here." And then Prabhupada was listening and listening and listening, and he says, "Yes, and Brahmananda Maharaj, you will go to Africa." And then at that moment I knew that, now Krishna consciousness is becoming an international society. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada's vision in the beginning began to manifest. But here in India, still things were in a state of infancy, and slowly, things began to mature. And we had, Prabhupada at that time didn't call them temples, but he called them camps. So we had a camp in Bombay for the Bombay construction, and we had a camp in Mayapur. And the number of devotees that were in Bombay were more than that of us that were in Mayapur. But with determination, these devotees, they had to undergo so much austerities, but their mission and their goal was to satisfy the desires of Srila Prabhupada and help him spread this society around the world. And whatever Srila Prabhupada would ask, devotees would, in most cases, would immediately volunteer. So there were some devotees who wanted to be there personally with Srila Prabhupada and get his mercy daily. But certain things that Srila Prabhupada said, they became ingrained in my being. And one thing that Prabhupada said, and I remembered it then and even up to this day now, was that service in separation is the highest form of service. Just like Srila Prabhupada, when he left India and came to America to inspire us to take up this mission. But again, as things began to develop, projects began to manifest themselves. And at one point in Mayapur, that's where I was stationed in Mayapur, we had almost completed the I think they call it the Lotus Building now. So this was the first building, and Prabhupada said, I want you to go to Japan. So, of course, whenever Prabhupada would request me to do something, immediately, without hesitation, I would go. So, I went to Japan, and at that time there was a few devotees there, and we had a temple. It was on the top of a mountain. It was called Mount Takao, and then near there was a Buddhist shrine also. And the house was like you see in the old samurai movies, with everything is made out of paper, and it was very far from the city. But I would go to the city for different purposes, and the number of people in Japan is unbelievable. So it's about the same size as the state of California, but it has half the population of the United States. And so you would stand at the corner, and when the light would change, people would cross the streets from all four corners at one time, and there would be thousands and thousands of people crossing the streets throughout the entire day. Because at that time, there were 25 million people in the city of Tokyo during the daytimes. And then after work, they may go out to the countryside to their homes. But I was thinking, wow, this would be a great place to make money. And so in 1974, they had the first Mayapur festival. And by that time, the Lotus Building, was not completely finished, but it was habitable. And so then all the devotees from different parts of the world came, and we had the first Mayapur festival for Gaur Purnima. And there I met two of my friends. By this time, Srila Prabhupada had he had given me sannyas in 1973, and I met with Guru Kripa Swami and Yasodananda Swami, and because we had been friends from being brahmacharis together, I was talking with them, and they were looking for a place to go because they had gone to America, and most of the temples in America had kicked them out because they were very powerful in their kirtan. They knew so many Sanskrit slokas, and so the temples felt intimidated by having them there because they would try to steal all the good book distributors. And so they came back to this festival in Mayapur, and they wanted to know what should they do. And so I told them, you come to Japan. I explained to them about how many people are there. And he says, you come to Japan and I know that we'll be able to sell a lot of books of Srila Prabhupada's books, even though we didn't have any books in Japanese at that time. But they said Japan, and I think they had stopped there during one of their Passovers, and they said, oh yeah, Japan. And so they decided to come to Japan. But before we left and were coming back to Japan, I took pictures because we had Food for Life at that time. And all of these people were there and sitting on the grounds, and we each took a bucket of kitri and whatever prasadam we had, and we personally were going down the aisles of these people, and we began feeding them and taking pictures of us feeding these people. So many people may say they're collecting money for the welfare of society or this or that, but this was proof showing them that we were actually doing this. And so we printed a little, very thin pamphlet in Japanese, which Banu Swami was able to translate and write. He was actually learning Japanese at that time, but he wrote this, and then we printed through Dai Nippon Insatsu many of these books, and then we would go out on the streets in Tokyo, and then we had some words, first, skoshi kanpa onegai shimasu, which means give a little donation. And then, ningen no fukushio no tame. And this means for the welfare of society. And so they, to dispel any suspicion that they may have, we would show them the cover, and on the cover would be pictures of us giving food. And Prabhupada came to Japan, and he went to Dai Nippon Insatsu, and at that time, of course, I was temple president, and Prabhupada told the men, the president, he says that I want you to give this boy a visa. So up until this time, everyone in Japan was there illegally, and so being on tourist visas, we were restricted in many ways, which we couldn't do activities. But they agreed to give me a visa, and then after getting a visa, Prabhupada, he told me this, now I want you to incorporate ISKCON in Japan, to make it a legitimate religious society. And in order to do this, you needed to have a property, a place where you could perform religious activities. And so we didn't have that much money in order to buy, but each day the boys in the Sankirtan party would go out and collect, and they would come back, and I was the treasurer because I was the only one able to open a bank account in Japan, and we started getting bags of money, and most of them were 100 yen coins, and in one bag would be about this big, and it weighed maybe 50 pounds. And then as days went by, the numbers of bags would increase, and every day I would go to the bank, and I would have one bag, I'd take it, and then they would dump it in the coin counting machine and count it up, and then they would write it in my bank book, how much it was. And then 2 days later, I'd come with 2 bags, and then 3 bags, and then finally I had like 4 bags or 5 bags of coins, and so much money was starting to come in. And the bank manager said, don't do this anymore. He says, we will come every day to your temple. And then we will pick up the money and we will add it to your account. So as time went by, the amount of money in the bank was growing and growing and growing and growing. And so, of course, at the same time here in Vrindavan, there was the beginning of the construction. Money was necessary, and began sending money to Srila Prabhupada. And I think because of course, devotees in the United States were contributing, but majority of the money for building this temple came from the people on the streets of Japan. So that was my contribution. So, and then, as I said, not until 1993 was I able to physically come here. So,
He's still here.
Yes. Hopefully for a few more days. Hare Krishna.
I have 2 minutes. Hare Krishna. Thank you. So much has been said, and again, for me, I was here for the opening and before the opening, and as everyone is mentioning, everything here is Srila Prabhupada's desire. And as we heard from everyone, especially Gopal Prabhu, you can see everyone's desire was just to please Srila Prabhupada. And as he had created the International Society, the opening of this temple, the grand opening, and the installation of the deities here, I think was one of Prabhupada's very special moments. As Dinabandhu Prabhu was saying, each time he would turn and offer first the incense, then the ghee lamp, then the water, his smile literally became bigger and bigger each time. And as Prabhupada's smile and ecstasy became greater, also the devotees. We were always recipients of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. I was remembering the deities when they were in Prabhupada's room. Up until the day of the opening, they had to be somewhere, and in the back room where the palanquin is, that's where the deities, they were all lined up in that room, covered with the white cloth. But if you were around there, sometimes you could go inside there and take a peek at the deities as everything was happening. So all these things were going on leading up to this very wonderful opening. And today, of course, is 46th anniversary of that day. And I'm sure it's also no accident that somehow or other Lord Ramachandra, he decided to also take part of this celebration. One of the places I appreciate most in India, outside of being here in Vrindavan, is when I first went to Devaprayag. Some of you know Devaprayag is a very special place. And it's also known as the place where Lord Ramachandra bathed after he killed Ravana. Why did he go bathe in the Ganges there? That's where it becomes Ganges. That's the first place where the river is known as the Ganga. Up until then, it's the Alaknanda coming from one spot and the Bhagirath River from the other spot. And then you can see where they merge. And those waters stay separate also for a very long time. You'll see the kind of the muddy side from the one, and the other side is more clear. But Lord Ramachandra bathed there because Ravana was a Brahmana. So because he killed the Brahmana, he took bath in the Ganga at that place. So that place is Devaprayag. It's also a very wonderful place. But I think now it's time, Mukunda Dat Prabhu. Everything is ready. So we're ready to begin Abhishek. So thank you everyone for your speaking, everyone for being here. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare